The morning of my grandson Noah's 6th birthday arrived with a cool, gentle breeze drifting in through my kitchen window. I woke earlier than I needed to, partly from excitement and partly from the familiar ache of wanting to be included, properly included, in my family's milestones. I sat at the table with a steaming cup of tea, letting the scents of chamomile and honey calm my nerves while sunlight filtered softly across the countertop. On the chair beside me sat a neatly wrapped gift bag decorated with tiny green dinosaurs. Inside was the little blue sweater I had spent the last 3 weeks knitting. I had counted and recounted the stitches, making sure each sleeve matched perfectly, smoothing the yarn until it lay flat and soft. My hands weren't as steady as they used to be, but the thought of Noah's smile kept me working. He always loved wearing things I made for him. At least, I believed he did. Children rarely pretend about things like warmth. I dressed carefully, wanting to look nice. Melissa, my daughter-in-law, always had a sharp eye for other people's flaws and an even sharper tongue when she found them. So I wore a simple navy dress with a matching cardigan, brushed my hair back into a low bun, and put in the pearl earrings Daniel bought me for Mother's Day years ago, back when he still cared enough to notice my preferences. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman trying her best, hoping today would be peaceful, maybe even joyful. Their house buzzed with life when I arrived. Balloons bobbed along the entryway, the smell of frosting hung in the air, and children were scattered everywhere, running, tumbling, shrieking with the kind of delight only sugar and freedom can produce. It took barely a second before Noah spotted me from across the room. "Grandma," he shouted with that bright, bubbling enthusiasm that always melted me. He dashed through legs and over toy cars to throw his tiny arms around my waist. I hugged him tightly, savoring that fleeting magic of childhood affection, before he zipped away again to rejoin the chaos. Melissa appeared in the doorway of the kitchen, wearing a brittle smile that never touched her eyes. "Oh, you made it?" she said, as if my attendance was optional or uncertain. Before I could respond, she turned toward the cluster of her friends near the table, chatting animatedly about the cake she had ordered from an expensive bakery. I placed my gift on the table and helped rearrange paper plates that were already askew. I offered to refill the juice pitchers and was met with vague nods, no real acknowledgement. But being overlooked wasn't new for me. Over the years, I had grown accustomed to helping in the shadows while everyone else took center stage. Later, when the decorations had settled and the candles were lit, everyone gathered around the birthday cake. It was a beautifully decorated chocolate creation with blue frosting and little edible stars. Noah's face glowed with excitement as everyone began singing, and I felt a swell of warmth in my chest. Then came the moment that would carve itself deep into my memory. Melissa began slicing the cake, handing plates to each family member with practiced grace. Her sister received one, her mother, her father, Daniel, even the children who were busy chasing balloons. I waited patiently, hands folded, standing next to the counter with a polite smile on my face. When she reached me, Melissa paused, just for a moment, long enough for her eyes to flick over my body, long enough for something ugly to curl at the corner of her mouth. Then she placed the slice of cake back onto the tray. "Not for you," she announced loudly enough that conversations dimmed. "You're already fat enough. You don't need cake." Laughter scattered across the room, small, sharp, careless. But what gutted me was Daniel. My son looked right at me, grinned, and chuckled. "Yeah, Mom, Melissa's right. She's only trying to help." The world seemed to tilt. The noise grew distant, like I was underwater. My heart wasn't just breaking. It was being chipped away, piece by piece, by the very person I raised with such fierce love. Still, I managed a smile, a small, brittle thing. "Of course," I whispered. I turned, gathered my purse, and left the party quietly, slipping out before the tears could catch up to me. The house felt unusually silent when I returned home from the party, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. I slipped off my shoes by the door and stood there for a long moment, my hand resting on the frame, trying to steady myself against the weight sitting on my chest. The image of Daniel laughing at me, kept replaying in my mind like a cruel, looping film. I moved to the kitchen and filled the kettle, though I wasn't really thirsty. The motions comforted me, turning the knob, waiting for the low rumble, watching steam drift upward. When the kettle clicked, I poured the water over a tea bag and sank into the chair by the window. Outside, the world carried on as usual. Neighbors walked dogs. Cars passed by. A child somewhere in the distance laughed, a sound innocent enough to make my eyes sting. How strange, I thought, that life doesn't pause after your heart cracks. I cupped the warm mug between my palms and let the memories rise, slowly at first, then rushing in like a tide. I remembered the nights when Daniel used to curl up beside me on the couch during thunderstorms, insisting he wasn't scared even as he clutched my arm. I remembered his first heartbreak at 16, when he buried his face in my shoulder and sobbed as though the world had ended. I remembered every scraped knee, every late night fever, every moment I held his trembling hands and whispered, "I'm right here." And yet somehow, over the years, I had become inconvenient, a background figure, a resource to tap into when needed, ignored when not. But it wasn't just the humiliation at the party that hurt. No, that moment only exposed a truth I had spent years avoiding. There had been signs, small ones at first, Melissa's faintly disdainful glances when I brought over homemade meals, her habit of correcting the way I spoke to Noah, as if my years of parenting suddenly meant nothing, her subtle but constant emphasis on boundaries, which apparently applied only to me. Then came the larger signs, the financial requests that grew in frequency and size, first for a car repair, then for home renovations, then for a down payment they desperately needed. And every time, they promised to pay me back, they never did. But I didn't mind, or at least I told myself I didn't, because family helps family, because I loved them, because I wanted to feel needed. But somewhere along the way, my generosity had morphed into expectation, and expectation had quietly become entitlement. The realization settled heavily in my chest. They never wanted me. They wanted my support, my presence when convenient, my wallet when necessary. A hollow laugh escaped me. How foolishly I had protected Daniel from the truth of his own behavior, making excuses for him long after he stopped deserving them. The next morning, the sunlight filtering through the curtains only reminded me of the night's ache. I moved slowly through my kitchen, brewing coffee this time, trying to shake off the dull numbness lingering in my bones. Then my phone rang. Seeing Daniel's name flash across the screen made my heart flutter, first with hope then with dread. Maybe he was calling to apologize. Maybe he had realized how deeply his words had cut. I answered. "Hey, Mom," he said brightly, almost too cheerfully. "Listen, we're short on the mortgage this month. Melissa bought some things for the house and we had those car issues, you know, and I was wondering if you could transfer the money today, just until next month." My throat tightened. Not an apology, not even acknowledgement of what happened, just another request. Daniel kept talking lightly, casually, as if he were discussing the weather, as if nothing meaningful had occurred, as if my humiliation had been so insignificant he'd already forgotten it. With each word, something inside me sharpened. The fog lifted. A thin, steely clarity took its place. I let him finish speaking. Then, very quietly, I said, "Daniel, do you remember yesterday?" He hesitated. "Oh, yeah." "Why, you hurt me." He didn't respond. I already knew why, because he didn't know how to react to a mother who stopped pretending. After a long silence, he sighed impatiently. "Mom, can we talk about this later? I really need you to send the money." And in that moment I realized exactly who I had become to him, not a mother, not a person, just a safety net. I inhaled slowly, feeling the last thread of denial finally snap. "No," I said softly. "I think we should talk now." But he pushed again. "Mom, please. We need the money today." Something inside me solidified a simple decision, a quiet resolve. I didn't yell, I didn't cry, I didn't explain. I just prepared the words that would change everything. Daniel's impatience crackled through the phone like static. He was still talking, still pushing, still assuming I would fold the way I always had. "Mom, please," he said, irritated now. "Just send it. We're already behind. Melissa's stressing out. I can't deal with all this today." There was no apology, no acknowledgement, no understanding of the hurt he'd carved into me. Only need, only expectation. I held the phone to my ear and listened. Not to him, but to the steady beat of my own heart. For years I had mistaken that heartbeat for weakness, for softness. I thought being a good mother meant being endlessly forgiving, endlessly giving, endlessly available. But in that moment, for the first time in a very long time, I heard something else in that heartbeat. Strength, a quiet, steady strength. "Daniel," I said, my voice soft but unshakable, "I want you to stop talking for a moment." He paused, not out of confusion. Okay." I closed my eyes, breathed in, and let the moment settle. "You embarrassed me," I said, calm but firm. "You laughed at me, in front of everyone." He sighed, the same exasperated sigh he used as a teenager whenever chores interrupted his video games. "Mom, we've been over this." Melissa was joking. "Why are you making such a big deal out of it?" Joking. Such a flimsy shield people used to defend cruelty, especially when they didn't want to take responsibility for it. My fingers tightened slightly around the phone. But still I didn't raise my voice. "It wasn't a joke," I said. "It was disrespect. From both of you." "Or again," he sighed. "Okay." Fine. Sorry, happy. Now can you please send the money? We're really struggling right now. There it was. The truth of it. The apology wasn't real. It was currency. A transaction. A means to an end. And that was when I knew. Truly, deeply knew. They didn't want my forgiveness. They wanted my help. They didn't want me in their lives. They wanted what I could give them. Suddenly, all the years of unspoken hurt, all the times I allowed myself to be minimized, dismissed, taken for granted, they crystallized into a single, sharp moment of clarity. I had been afraid for so long. Afraid of losing him. Afraid of being alone in the difficult mother-in-law. Afraid of being unwanted. But now, the fear was gone. I felt oddly peaceful. The kind of peace that comes only after a storm breaks open the sky. Daniel, I said quietly. He responded quickly. Yeah. I let a small, calm breath slip out. Then I spoke the 3 words that would unravel everything. Ask your wife. Silence. Not a confused silence. Not an irritated silence. A stunned silence, as if no part of him had ever imagined those words coming from me. Mom, what? His voice dropped an octave. What is that supposed to mean? It means, I said gently, that I'm no longer going to fix the problems you two create. I won't be your fallback. I won't be your safety net. If Melissa is the one making decisions about who deserves cake and who doesn't, then she can make decisions about the mortgage too. He inhaled sharply. Are you serious? This is ridiculous, he snapped, voice rising. You're punishing us. No, I said softly. I'm finally choosing myself. His breath crackled through the speaker, hot and uneven. We could lose the house. That, I said, is between you and your wife. He tried again and again. Arguing, pleading, circling around the issue like someone trying to find a crack in a locked door. But the door was closed. Firmly. Finally, when his frustration peaked, he muttered, I don't even know who you are right now. And I surprised myself by smiling. I'm your mother, I said. Just not the version you're used to. Before he could respond, I ended the call. My hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the release of something heavy and old, something I had carried far too long. The silence in the room grew warm, almost comforting. For the first time in years, I felt like I was standing on my own feet, not leaning, not bending, not shrinking, just standing strong, and somewhere deep inside me, a new beginning stirred. Weeks passed after that phone call. The house felt different, lighter somehow. Without the constant weight of Daniel and Melissa's demands hanging over me, I began reclaiming pieces of my life I hadn't realized I'd lost. I painted again, filling blank canvases with colors that mirrored my moods, deep blues for the moments of reflection, fiery reds for the quiet anger that still lingered, golden yellows for the freedom I was discovering. I walked in the mornings, slowly at first, then briskly, feeling the world move under my feet as if applauding each step I took for myself. Then, one evening, the phone rang. Daniel's name flashed across the screen. My heart tightened for a moment, not from fear but from the memory of our last conversation. The 3 words that had shifted everything. I considered ignoring the call, letting him stew in his frustration, but something told me this was important. Hello, I said calm. Mom, Daniel began, voice unusually low and measured. Can you come over? We need to talk. I paused. Did I want to? For years, I would have jumped at the chance to fix whatever problem they were facing. But now, I had learned the value of standing still, of choosing when to show up and on whose terms. I'll come, I said simply. When I arrived at their house, the first thing I noticed was the tension. Melissa opened the door, her smile forced and tight, eyes flicking nervously toward Daniel. He looked exhausted, worn down by months of trying to maintain control over a situation he could no longer manipulate. We sat in the living room, a triangle of unease. I waited quietly while they spoke in hushed tones to each other, glancing at me with something between guilt and frustration. I didn't interrupt. I didn't rush to apologize or explain myself. I let them feel the weight of their own actions. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice cracking slightly. Mom, things have been really hard for us lately. And I guess I never realized how much I hurt you yesterday, with the cake. Melissa shifted in her seat, whispering apologies I could barely hear over the thundering pulse of my own clarity. I took a slow breath, letting their discomfort fill the room. I still love my grandson, I said, meeting their eyes evenly. He is the reason I do what I do, and I will never stop loving him. But I am no longer willing to let either of you treat me as a joke, as a backup plan, or as a source of endless supply. There was a pause, thick and heavy. Melissa's cheeks flushed, her lips pressed tightly together. Daniel's head bowed, silent, as if my words had struck something deep within him he could no longer ignore. I won't help you at the expense of my dignity, I continued, my voice soft but unwavering. "I won't allow my kindness to be mistaken for weakness. And I certainly won't let either of you diminish me in front of my grandson, or anyone else." The room was silent, but I didn't flinch. I could feel the balance of power shifting subtly. This was my moment. Not one of yelling or humiliation, but one of quiet strength, an assertion of the respect that had long been denied to me. Weeks later, Noah's birthday rolled around again. This time, the celebration was at my house. It was small, intimate, and filled with laughter that came from genuine happiness rather than obligation. Daniel and Melissa attended, hesitant, subdued, unsure of their footing. I served the cake personally. Each slice was given with care, each smile genuine. When I reached Melissa, I handed her a slice without a word, meeting her gaze calmly. She took it, lips pressed together, a hint of shame coloring her cheeks. Noah, oblivious to the underlying tension, bounced excitedly toward me, holding his plate aloft. "Grandma, I saved you the biggest piece?" I accepted it, smiling warmly, feeling the sweetness of chocolate mix with the sweetness of justice. Not revenge born of cruelty, but of dignity reclaimed. For the first time in years, I felt entirely in control of my own life, my own joy, and my own heart. The laughter, the cake, the little blue sweater I had knitted, all of it reminded me that love for my family did not require me to sacrifice my self-respect. Melissa and Daniel learned, finally, that respect cannot be demanded, it must be earned. And sometimes the quietest, simplest acts of standing up for yourself are the most powerful revenge of all. As I took a bite of my cake, I let myself savor it slowly, not just for the chocolate, but for the knowledge that I had finally, peacefully won.